Glitter has meant absolutely everything to me because it's a material that I discovered at Elam Art School when I was a student there doing my fine arts degree, and I haven't stopped using it as a material since. But for me, the breakaway in using this as a material is trying to express and discover how glitter as a material can be greater than the sum of its parts. And you may have heard me talk about glitter being stereotyped into areas like craft, kids play, carnival and drag. And I've seen it as my job to experiment and show that glitter is more than those sum of its parts. And with just a little bit of effort, everything around us that we take for granted or have boxed into a series of meanings can be more when we let it be. And the other, I guess, very important component of it is allowing glitter to have a whakapapa and acknowledging that whakapapa comprises of acknowledging inanimate and animate objects within genealogy, and that the work from glitter is starting to grow up into materials that express those qualities of glitter, that flicker, that shine, that reflect, but are sourced from natural materials like sand that turns to glass, or sand and seas when the sun hits it. So it's going from something plastic to something personal. Well, most definitely. Let's start with the worst. I have a great friendship with vacuum cleaners, and vacuum cleaners, like hoses, seem to have a purpose of being incredibly irritating, especially cords. It's just a very small thing, but that is one of the worst qualities of it. I have come to accept that when I leave studio, I am covered in it but can't see it. So I'm very used to being stared at, and I'm very used to being questioned, and have a lot of fun coming up with answers to those who ask as to why are you covered so much in glitter. The best thing about glitter, I think, goes back to that first question, that it has a limitless potential. I'm so excited to continually discover, just like a little boy in a glitter sandpit. I'm very excited about where it could take me, the works I'll be able to create from it for the rest of my life, wherever that may be, and that's one of the most exciting parts about it. Reflections and lights began as being contained within the surface of a glitter painting, and what they relied upon was for us to move around, navigate and almost dance with the work, for those things to appear. And as my practice has moved into sculpture, I'm allowing those reflections to take up more space. And with Ngāi Tūhoe, that's out front of Auckland Art Gallery, those light reflections and orbs are there to create a new star system from which the waka, from which we can navigate to. And we don't know where we're going particularly, but we need those stars to sort of highlight the way. And then when I think about the work Koro, which is being shown for the first time in the show The Only Dream Left, not only are the orbs and the lights that are refracted onto the walls a navigational star system, but because they're being issued from the conch, they to me are a type of light language. They come from the shell and they reach as far as the star system does to talk to as many people along the way. and there is no answer about what those orbs are saying or teaching or telling. That can always be personified to the person who's there if they connect. But it seems like they've gone from activators on the surface of a skin of canvas to communicators within the space that surrounds a viewer when they're in the gallery. That inspiration started, its first layer, because I think it has many layers, starts with the inspiration of Ngāi Tūhoe, the crystal waka at Auckland Art Gallery. And at the blessing ceremony with mana whenua Ngāti Whātua, we all arrived and there were no lights on in the reflection pool that this work rises out from. And those lights are very important because they're the lights that display the rainbow orbs and light orbs around the Auckland Art Gallery walls. And it wasn't until during the blessing, when the pū moana shell was blown to activate the proceeding, when breath met shell, that the lights activated to show us a conversation between times gone and present. And afterwards, after thinking about it, I started to see that light as a type of language that connected the past to the present, activated by the shell conch. So my conch is based off a native New Zealand conch, which are a lot smaller than our Pacific conches, and that came from the Auckland Museum. But then in its secondary layers, my grandfather, Jack Paterson, appeared, and Jack Paterson was a sand miner in Matata with Tim Sykes. And we all know that crushed shell and rock create the sands of our coasts, and the sand that was being mined in Matata was going directly to the building industry. So I wanted to honour not only my grandfather but the systems he was in place in creating cities, especially this idea that we may just be living in cities made from shells. That is, urban as our cities seem, they all really come from that beautiful place where sea meets land and the shore grinds things back down into sand. And sand is, you know, the world's second largest resource after water. And I think it's important to highlight these environmental strains that we're putting on such a beautiful material. It wasn't until about 3 weeks ago that a cousin of mine sent me a photo of another Paterson called John Paterson. And John Paterson was Jack Paterson's grandfather. And just to run smoothly with the whole idea of the work being about building and cities and the places we navigate through and live within, I found out that John Paterson and his company built the town hall. And the town hall is situated directly opposite City Gallery Wellington and Civic Square. So we managed to get a piece of original concrete from that build and have anchored that concrete underneath the shell, but very hidden by the plinth. So not only does it create a layer of whakapapa through material, but speaks so strongly at how family have had connections to building our cities of shells. As I was acknowledging my grandfather's sand mining business and acknowledging John Paterson as a builder, I wanted all of the materials that the work is made out of to reference that. So the core material within the work is aluminium, which uses sand in its process. The crystal glass barnacle families on the back of the work, of course, are also made from sand. And it was just that piece of concrete that I had lacking within the work, which I could now bring over from this Grade 1 heritage building, the town hall, to place as an important component of the work as well. I think this is such an important question. It wasn't a question that arose until microplastics were given the heat. And I do think that glitter unfairly seemed to take the rap for microplastics in general. Fine art and art practices are about archival for lifetimes. And my use of glitter at that very forefront is different to how glitter as a microplastic is encountered, in that I'm here to make it stick and I'm here to make it last, and I do everything that I can to make that so. The issue with microplastics and glitter, I think, is more poignantly focused toward festival, where festivals may be celebrated near our waterways, whether that be rivers or on the beaches and near the sea. And that's the importance of using something like biodegradable. And what's interesting about that as a glitter material is that will biodegrade like an apple core over time. So if it does make its way into the ecosystem or the marine life system, we know that it has a set life of when it will break down. But mine, I guess, isn't biodegradable because I want my paintings to survive, and it goes back to that being archival. So for a practice, I take the responsibility of recycling as I can, so that as much of my glitter use is being archived onto canvas or onto sculpture. And I think particularly, as we are now so personally aware of what's happening in our environment, and our environment is really talking to us this summer in 2023, not only through the North and South Islands of New Zealand, but globally, that we really need to listen to the signal and dedicate to trying even more to look at ways to be sustainable. And as an artist, I think all artists look at creating sustainable practices, and that's one thing that I'm going to look at to see if I can do even more. Oh well, I think that's already appeared, and that's the manifestation of glitter back into its natural self. Now, I've said this and I say this a lot, but my relationship to art is the longest and most fulfilling relationship I've ever had with anything. We are great lovers together, we work really well. But at the core of that inspiration was me growing up on the West Coast, on the black beaches, and really living in glitter landscapes. Because when that sun hit that sand or hit that sea, everything was sparkling around me. And what I notice is that the practice seems to be returning almost to its natural form, like Koro, which contains building materials. I see that I'm bringing in particularly the material of glass. So it's about the very first time I fell in love with those glittering surfaces on those beaches of the West Coast, manifesting into the materials they're used for in glass. For me, talking about glitter as being my longest relationship also implies that over that relationship, glitter has to grow up too. So glitter's really hitting 30 years old now, and I see him as a relationship growing into the maturity of his own materials himself. So he is transforming from plastic into glass. He is growing eternally. I'm not saying that I'm giving glitter up, because as I've said before, I still think that glitter has a lot to prove and a lot to express and still a lot to show me. But that's where I think it's going. I think he's growing up. David was first exhibited in Gowlingsford in 2012, and interestingly in the show there are two other pieces that come from that show. They're the Winged Victory of Summerthrice, the painting that is in proximity to the bear, and also Mona Lisa, the Black Panther that sits in another gallery space. Both the bear and the panther are life-size, but David is a little bit of a twist in that David is a life-size female bear with a male name. His first layer of inspiration comes from Michelangelo's sculpture of David, world famous antiquity, loved the world over for brawn and brain, and at once I think a very homoerotic type of sculpture, something that teases us in more ways than one. I wanted him to be a 2012 version of Michelangelo's David. So what I've managed to sneak into him is this mix of gender, that he is at once a life-size female bear with a male name, but also talk to a lot of homosexual code that is used within our community to describe men in a homoerotic sense. So here he is to present that. But I think he also represents the bewilderment of a viewer in the gallery. He sits here almost uncomfortably, like no other work does, not assured by his purpose here, yet he engages for a reason. Particularly the work that's now behind me seems to be what he's referencing. So hopefully he poses more questions than answers. This is so easy. This is so easy, you know. So I think in this show, The Only Dream Left, you'll see there is a lot of animals, and I'm incredibly emotionally attached to them, to animals, to their imagery in artworks, to their metaphor through the ages, but also their idea of being very exotic to us in New Zealand, because I think culturally Māori have been played off as exotic too. We are at once, as in the animal kingdom, the predator and the prey. We're the prey to national ideals, but we're the predators to the subservience of others. But yet, you know, like animals, we hold our own power, and we hold our own fight and flight. But my animal, this is me, and it always has been, and you know, good friends, if they're watching this, will know exactly what I'm going to say. I am the stag, and have always been the stag. During art school, that was basically all I painted the whole way through. I did a year in printmaking and then my final 2 years in painting, and I just did stags. And what I'm really attracted to about them is that they hold a type of elegance, yet are all about defense through their horns. They protect their families, they protect each other, but they have this solace about them that almost makes them seem too gentle to be prey to anything. They hold their own. So yeah, it's always been about the stag for me since I was little. I love them to pieces, and there is one other animal actually that I love, and it's an otter. I just like them. Those are my favourites. The studio to me is like my teenager's bedroom. I don't allow too many rules for the very important regard of complete freedom. It is a space that's very private, that people don't get invited to. And I think a lot of artists, even if they were to receive visitors, would do a tidy up to a studio. A studio is only known to the artist itself, and in my case, the dog that is always in there with me. But I am a very big fan of music as a form of company. I'll say I'm not listening to the music, but the music is there as a voice, just to know that somebody's there with me. But I have a very eclectic and wide range of music because I have an eclectic and very wide range of emotions within that studio space that are either elicited by the work or the ideas or the process. But I guess if I had to give an answer about what type of music I like to listen to more than any other, it would be disco, soul, early rap. And I'm a huge Smiths fan. Like, I'm all for Morrissey, I'm all for the Smiths. I have been since I was 14. So I guess he often pops up as the old mate I need to have there for a bit of comfort. What would my intro music be? I mean, you know that big question, what's your favourite song? And that always changes all the time. Okay, I'm just going to go for now, just for today, and it's going to change tomorrow. One of my favourite disco songs, which is by Silver Connection, and it's called Fly Reuben Fly, because I always hear Fly Reuben Fly. So that's my intro music. Fly Reuben Fly, up to the sky. I like to think that I did nothing before I was an artist. I always feel like I was an artist. I feel like I was lucky to be born to the fact that I was always going to be an artist. But there have been other things that I've done. The most important profession I've worked in is primary school teaching. So after returning from an OE overseas, I went to Teachers Training College in Auckland and was a part of the first graduate diploma in primary school teaching. It was a very interesting year because it was inaugural, and they had to learn a lot too about how do you create teachers in 1 year. What is the pathway to creating a great teacher in 1 year? But you can't create a teacher. Teachers are just teachers are born to be teachers. It's such a valuable and special vocational trade that I believe a lot of those experiences as being a primary school teacher I still impart into my practice today. One of those could be that being in front of a class is a bit like being on stage, and you have a job to do, and on that stage you do it to no matter what end to get those kids learning. And although a lot of my career is spent in the studio, a lot of it too is on a stage, because people want to know more about the practice or more about the artist, so you do have to present. And I think that part of teaching really helped me access the confidence to be the face of my work, when in New Zealand we'd learnt that a lot of artists could hide behind it, could hide behind their work and let their work do the talking for them. The other very important thing that I've learnt from teaching is that although I'm sitting in a Q&A right now, just because I'm here to talk to my work doesn't mean I am the answer. And I am driving, particularly with the show, for the the gallery assistants who work on the floor, or all of the staff, not to think that with a question comes a definitive answer that explains the work in its entirety. I don't think art works like that. And in all honesty, some works I still don't really understand either. They just had to be made. And that we're living in a society of answers, but art is the true answer to us just asking a question, enjoying things on the surface if need be, reaching into research, which is a very educational thing to find out how that work may relate to us personally. But yeah, that's a keystone. Art is a visual language that's an educator that you may learn from if you choose to do the research. Don't expect to come to a show here at City Gallery and have all the works delivered with an answer. I just think, like, you know, it's like if you really want a pair of shoes, you just make it happen. You know, it's if you want something, go and make it happen. I think it's very important, you know, if you are younger and really trying to find that money, go to the sources that are there within our community that are here to sponsor the arts. My go-to was Creative New Zealand. And I think a lot of people get put off by the application process of it, but believe me, there's true positives in those huge applications because it starts to get you very organised. If art is a very free and fluid studio experience, there's a very big business side that's attached to it. And I don't mean business in a way that makes us real. It's a really fun thing because you're still working within the bounds and over the facets of what is our art diamond. But those applications to CNZ get you sorted about timeframes, expectations, discussing the layers and the concepts, or having the opportunity to look at them more. So I think it's important to look beyond, or just go out there and work hard and make your money. I mean, that's what I had to do to create work. But like anything, if you really want to do it, you'll just go and do it. There's no question. If you want it, go do it. I feel like I already have. I think that we've become a lot more collegial and supportive of one another, particularly when I think about equity for artists and the resale royalty scheme. I think there are a lot of artists involved in the governance of arts that seems to kick in about this time, I think, for artists. You know, you've been in it 25, 30 years and you really start to think about the younger ones that are coming through and what you'd like to be better for them. And I do want those younger artists to know that us older ones are trying to set up a new charge for you and make this better. Make it more respected, a more respected place for you. And they will do the same for the next generation to come through. Maybe that's where I'd like to see our community go. To converge in spaces where we should have more respect. I would really like for and this isn't in regard to the community itself, but how we're viewed as a community, to be respected as true creatives with personally learned business structures, because I think we're quite incredible like that. Art school isn't about teaching any type of business. We have to do this all on our own backs. And that the days when you believed our work came out of addiction, or that our work came out of mental health, has really changed, and that we take what we do very, very seriously because it comes from such deeply personal spaces for us. I hope that for our community, as our world becomes so much more beautifully inclusive, the voices of all have a space on every gallery wall. That's actually what I wish for our community, that having been an artist whose voice has been suppressed for many years and now finds itself being able to occupy those spaces, I so look forward to seeing all the voices to come and then being loud and proud because they're so pertinent and special. Judy, Dara, Dane Mitchell and myself have been working these last few years on the resale royalty scheme as equity for artists. A lot of these things you'd think should already be in place because they're the foundry of the respect to artists all across the globe, even in Australia except here. So now our artists are going to be able to look forward to making some money from resale royalties in art secondary market for the first time ever. And it won't be, I don't think it's going to be finances that change worlds, but it's money that gives back the respect we deserve for art being in such an insanely out of control financial system, because art is one of the only businesses that's unregulated across the planet. So there are some really beautiful things starting to happen to support the arts. There's also a lot of new copyright law coming through that not only protect us but pay us out when our work's being published. So as a community we're getting stronger, and as a community we're finding new acknowledgements in ways that have never been seen before. And secondary markets can be very big. You know, law change is complicated because it sets to define what those secondary markets are. But you know, let's just take for instance auction houses. And there have been some incredibly moral and responsible responses from auction houses, particularly Art and Object in Auckland, who are leading the way and acknowledging that yes, we are going to support this for the arts. And what it also means is that as an arts collective of artists, we can set up cultural funds from artists who may have passed, or artists who are not so interested in being a part of the resale royalty scheme. And that cultural fund will in turn keep supporting our younger ones as they come through. So finally, artists are able to support our own. Artists can support artists because of this program, because of this law change. I believe in huge ways. It's, you know, I am the son of two very different families, you know, stretched across New Zealand, and I find myself right in the middle there, trying to be a connector between two different things. And then not only that, I'm queer. So when I first started introducing, first having the opportunity to get my work out there, do you know, I really believe that I think I suppressed a lot of that content because I personally couldn't find any of that content out there. I was never shy to. There was always a layer of that content, but it truly wasn't allowed a voice. And it wasn't difficult because I was still in a very joyous moment of being able to create and being in a profession and being able to be a professional and have my work seen and have my work sold in gallery spaces. So even 10 years on, you know, and this was happening as frequently as 10 years ago, here I am now able to talk about things I was never really able to talk about in the past. And it sort of poses some interesting questions to me as I watch my work age, in that, were there any gay Māori artists available to be inspired by for me growing up as a young artist? No. And isn't that a peculiar thing? All I had was Teo Schoon, a Dutch artist who committed wholeheartedly to Te Ao Māori and Taonga Māori, and he was the only one I could really source. So he's going to be forever special to me, and I know he's exhibited here at City Gallery. As time's evolving, the absolute pleasure of meeting younger rainbow community artists within New Zealand, you can't help but think, oh my goodness, what would it have been like for me back then to feel like I had a sense of community? So it's never too late to find that. I guess now this voice feels a part of a community, but I never ever imagined all those quieter voices would finally be surfacing up to be spoken as these acknowledged truths in gallery spaces. It is incredible. It's an incredible time to be an artist. I loved my playgrounds because they were so dangerous. So I've broken a rib and an arm from playground experiences as a kid, and I still have these really good gashy scars on my shins from these crazy maypole things in this playground we had at my primary school. But was the question, what is my imaginary playground like? I guess, I'd still want it to be the beach. I'd still really crave for the shoreline and the West Coast surf as my playground. It's an absolutely sensational place to play because you can at once feel so dangerous and so adrenalized, catching those big waves as little boys. And my brother was just telling me recently that he still has this memory of me and my two other brothers out the very back of the surf break at Piha, and we were very brave boys on our boogie boards, and that a whole lot of surfers were like, boys, hey guys, you've got to get back into shore, you're too far back here, and we just dropped them the finger and caught a big wave back into shore. So it's I'm really glad that we were brought up at Piha, because you did have to be semi-stupid but brave. And that should be the disclaimer too, because don't go and do that, kids. Don't get out there and do the crazy things that we were allowed to back then. But yeah, I've got to say, even if I had to have an imaginary one, it's got to be Piha. This is a question I've always found difficult to answer. Now that I've had a 30-year career, I wonder if it's easier to say. The easier question would be, what would I say to myself? And I would just say, keep on going. Keep on going. Never give up the trust in your passion. Never give up the love you have for the thing that's bringing you the most joy. Don't buy into the idea that success is necessarily about being presented by a dealer gallery. Honour the fact that your art path may be very different from what you would want it to be, and really roll with that. My career has definitely been very different to how I imagined it. But of course, now I've experienced it, I wouldn't have wished it anymore. If your parents don't think it's the best job because you won't make any money, don't worry. I'm sure you'll make some good money. And it's not always about the money. Artists learn to give money a different hierarchy because we never get paid weekly. But if it's for you, if it's meant to be, trust that it will be. You will get all your dreams if it's meant to be.